Shows up later in the evening.
What's in that
The
bottle,
cast will be
Eric?
here later.
Yeah.
Poland Spring.
He's in the
Okay.
basement next
Oh,
to
yeah.
the distillery.
You know what, everybody?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
All right.
You never know.
It is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the Sturbridge Conservation Commission meeting. It's Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. We are having a virtual meeting pursuant with Governor Baker's March 12th order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing restrictions on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Sturbridge Conservation Commission will be held via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen and or watch the meeting may do so via the town's online demand video broadcast on cable television at 191 or dial into the meeting at 774-304-1455, enter 1428# for meeting number and 12345 for access code. This phone number is only active for the public during public meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to assure that public can adequately access meetings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, best efforts will be made. We will post the meeting on the town website and or video or audio recording, transcript, and comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meetings. That said, I'm going to do a quorum check, which we have 100% all here. But let's call it off, starting with Eric.
Here.
Stephen.
Stephen Chittister, present.
Dave Barnacle.
David Barnacle, present.
Steve Haldeman.
Steve Halterman, your phone is off.
And Ed Goodwin here. I'm going to read the opening statement for public hearings so that we have that for any public hearings that we have. In the interest of saving time, the Town of Sturbridge Conservation Commission will hold all public hearings tonight for work within a wetland, water body, or resource area and or within 200 feet of the buffer zone to a wetland, water body, or resource area in accordance with Mass Wetland Protection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, Section 40, and associated regulations, and the Town of Sturbridge Wetlands bylaws and associated regulations. We will not be reading the newspaper ad. Prior to the opening of each first public hearing, the applicant is to submit proof of notification to the abutters within 200 feet of the subject property line and proof of legal newspaper advertisement. If these items are not submitted, the public hearing will not open. Additionally, prior to any start of each public hearing, we will announce the location of the project, the applicant, and the applicant's representative. Okay? That being said, we will go to committee updates. I will start with CPA. We had a CPA meeting that last night, and we really had two subjects. One was the discussion of and support of the selectmen in pursuit of the Belanger property, and the other one was an update on Streeter Beach property. It was a pretty short meeting, about a half an hour, and it was done remotely. David, anything on trails?
Yeah, before I do that, Mr. Halterman, you should turn on your microphone. is off at the present time. The Trails Committee meeting is Thursday of this week, so we haven't had one for the past 3 weeks.
Okay. And anything on Lakes Advisory, Eric?
No, and they haven't had a meeting all year. Is there a requirement for that committee to hold a meeting, and should we push the issue at all, or is it just what it is?
Not that I'm aware of. David, do you remember?
Actually, I don't.
No, I don't remember there being a requirement. It's when they decide to become active,
Okay. Well, nothing.
as far as I know. Yeah.
Hey, can you hear me now, Dave, or anybody?
Yes.
Yep.
That's fine, Steve.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Becky, do we have any walk-ins?
How about,
Sorry.
No walk-ins.
David? Did you have some input, David?
well, thank you. My mistake.
Yep. All right, Becky, we are at 6:06, so we can't start our first public hearing. So
Right.
what would you like to take care of, Beck?
Well, we had approval of minutes on here, but I think it says August 18th. It should have said September 1st. So we can just carry those. I know they were provided to you, but we can carry those on to the next agenda so we have it on there correctly. So we'll skip over that. We do have a tree removal that we can do. I think that would be quick enough, but just before I forget, so before we do the public hearings, all of the public hearings that we do have on the agenda are new projects, so there's no continuations. And we did receive all the legal ad receipts, I guess, and the abutter notification. So we do have those for all of those, so that way I don't have to say that for each public hearing too. But for the tree removal, this is
Great.
for 118 Paradise Lane. This is, we did do a site visit out here last Thursday. We did ask, as part of the site visit, they did modify the request. I will put the new request up on the screen. Jeff, can you allow me to share? So while I'm getting that up there, the new request is for the removal of 15 trees, which we identified on the site, and for keeping 3 of the hemlocks near the water. But I'll pull up the thing in a moment here. All right, so here's the the sketch that was drawn up. Purple indicates removal, and then the green here is for staying. Let me just scroll down because I can't see it on mine. And the pinkish color is a hemlock staying. The only thing that he forgot to include on here, that's actually 13 trees, is if you can see where my cursor is, there was 2 dead, I believe they might have been oaks, I'm not sure, in the front of the house that he just forgot to include, so the property owner asked those be included on here. So I have no concerns based off of our review of the condition of those on the site, and with the arborist assessment. I'd recommend the approval of the removal of the 15 trees, and then the treating of the 3 hemlocks by the shore. They also did include replacements, 2 river birch by the shore for the 2 removed by the shore. That's all.
Okay. Discussion. Eric?
No, I was on site. As long as they're keeping those hemlocks, are those the only 2 plantings that they're putting in, by the way, Becky? Just the 2 river birches?
By the lake shore, correct.
Yeah, okay.
I have 2
All right.
questions.
Go ahead.
My 2 questions. Number 1, first of all, are the 2 river birches going to be one root ball with 2 river birches in it, or are they going to be 2 separate river birches?
I don't recollect that it's specified.
We never suggest.
I think we should make them 2 clumps, David.
Well, that is
2 clumps of river birch.
my typical feeling has been that one individual river birch does not do nearly as well as a pair because of their spindly nature as they get older. And so oftentimes, like the ones in my yard, had to be tied together in order to give them enough strength to be able to continue growing. My second question is, why is it there's such a disparity between the number of plantings as you just heard, and I mean the number of cuttings and the number of plantings? I don't understand agreeing to take down well over a dozen trees, not having any of those other dozen trees replaced.
So, yeah.
Let me see if I can give you
Go ahead.
an answer. First of all, the applicant did, as you enter the site, David, and I know you've been there, he kept all the trees to the right that they had committed to keeping, and they created a pool, a detention pond behind the house, and everything was done well within what was agreed to from what I could see. And they also, along the other side of the house, have already made a row of plantings to try and start their own orchard up against other trees too. It's not like so the issue that they were bringing to our attention was along the house to the as you face the water to the left. There were a number of trees that were I don't know what state you want to call them in. They were hanging over the neighbor's house. Most of them were in the, I want to say, 8 to 12 inch diameter range, and they were asking that they take those out because one had gone down on the porch of the neighbor, and they all looked like they were going to be, be a problem, going forward. So there were other trees there. They weren't cleaning the trees out. I felt, and they had to the front left of the property along the lake, we had asked them to leave a complete berm, and that's not on your diagram, but that berm of trees and bushes, etc., was untouched. So I don't know, Steve, you want to give you a measure of it? You were there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Dave. When you take a look at it on the surface, it does appear that we're not doing enough plantings. I mean, they were amenable to do anything that we asked. I think what's been described is the way I saw it. Also, I mean, like I say, they said they would do anything that we asked. A lot of those trees weren't necessarily ones that, they looked like they needed to come down or they were going to fall down on somebody's house. I don't know. I thought the plan was fine. Eric, you were there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't like they were clear cutting all the trees out of there. I mean, the only concern that I would have would be to any precedent that it might set, or people would come back at us. But I don't know that that's really comes into play in this case. It's not going to hurt the canopy for the lake, for where we're talking about them being cut. They are leaning towards the other person's property, and they were very amenable to saving that or working to save the hemlocks that are right there in the right near the resource area. So, yeah, I don't have a personal problem with it as it stands, overall.
But just to get back into this for a second, that we did not make any decisions because there was only three of us there, and we could not act like we were in a meeting. So this actually was pretty much left open. And like I said, they were amenable to do whatever. So, you know, in my opinion, if we feel that more things should be planted in there, then we pretty much said we'd have to discuss it at the meeting.
One of the reasons for my question is I do remember the site, and what I remembered was that they frequently had problems of flow. They frequently had drainage problems in that vicinity.
Right.
And I thought the more trees we had, the better they might be in terms of A, reducing the flow velocity, and B, in terms of more absorption. But it's up to you guys. You saw it.
What would your suggestion be, David?
What'd you say, Eric?
Sorry, I just asked what David's suggestion would be.
One of the things that you might think about is that easily it's not 200 feet from the road to the lake. So you could, I don't know, Eric, maybe fill in some of the spaces, but you indicated that you didn't think the canopy was really going to be disturbed or its shadowing effect on the lake.
No, I don't believe so.
That sort of kinds our hands.
Right.
The other thing, David, the flow down that you remember, you're correct, comes, as I said, it comes down, and they have a pool there for the water to, you know, detention pond or, and they have, that is completely, there's no cutting going on in there. They left that.
Oh, for God's sake, I misunderstood you. You said pool with nothing else. I thought you were talking about a swimming pool.
No. It is. That stopped it. You remember we designed, it was a part of the agreement on the plan, and then there's a stone swale that goes down along the left side, and I think that stone swale might have even had some negative impact on those trees on that side and tipped them. So.
Just want to point out too that some of the trees that are in the yard, the property owner had indicated they tried to save them. They were actually, none of the trees were required to be saved in the yard. So a couple of those, as pointed out in the site visit, were probably damaged during construction, but they had approval to remove those originally anyways. And some of these smaller ones by the swale that are coming out, there is a good amount of trees in that area and a lot of smaller saplings, which will have the opportunity to grow in that area now too.
You know, one of the reasons that I'm concerned about property like this is because we're allowing two hemlocks to be down by the waterfront on one of the lakes, which has been seriously affected by the aphids. And what I'm worried about is that we get back into that same situation when the heat builds up, and all of a sudden, what we've got is a woolly adulgid attacking those two trees, and now they have to come down. But maybe we address that at that time, and then we ask for plantings along the waterfront.
The two trees that they're taking down that are along the waterfront are not by yours and my standards, but by the arborist standards, dead.
Oh. Okay.
They are severely damaged by woolly adulgid, and so that, and they also are canopied by a tree on that property next door. So, that's right. I would think that we should do what you had mentioned and require two, rather than two singular birches, but two clumps of birches.
They actually are. So just check the application.
I think they'd be glad to.
Sorry, it is two clumps. I just checked. I just checked the application.
Okay.
It's two clumps.
Anybody else? All in favor? Steve Haldeman?
Steve Haldeman, I'm in favor.
Eric?
Eric Gaspar, I'm in favor.
David?
David Barnacle in favor.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chidester in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Thank you. We are now at 6:15. 106 South Shore Drive, notice of intent, DEP file number 300-1069, J&K Rudy, I don't know, owner applicant, Lance Jalbert Engineering representative, construction porch over a lower deck and construction, is that Rook or Nook? Becky?
I think it's supposed to be
Over
roof.
construction, roof? Okay. Over a portion of the northern deck. All right? Is Lenny on board?
Yes, I'm on board.
Hi, Lenny.
Anthony, how you doing? Good evening.
Good evening to you, too.
What this actually is it's work that's only taken place on the westerly portion of the cottage itself. The actual deck that's on the property presently is only 21.7 feet from the water to the deck itself. What we're actually doing is we're taking off roughly 9 foot of the deck, which is on the most westerly side, and leaving that as a open space. And the new deck we're actually putting on is a 16 by 28, which is two-story deck, which is the upper deck would be the 16 by 28, which the lower deck is actually 16 by 20. It would have a membrane roof on the lower deck, which actually would be running off and draining to a cul-de-sac, which is located on the southerly side of the house, adjacent to the property line on that side. The work that's being done on the deck itself is that the whole deck will be completely removed and rebuilt. It needs repair. Also, the stairwell, which is located on the southerly side of the deck, which is immediately adjacent to it, that area there, that stairwell and the stairs would be replaced with new lumber in that area, but the rest of the stairs leading from there to the water would not be touched nor replaced. It would stay as is. It'd be fine. So the work here is actually minimal in that what we're actually going to end up with is on the westerly side or immediately westerly of the deck itself, there'd be that 9 foot space of which roughly 3 to 4 feet of it encroaches along the 25 foot no touch area. That area itself there would be revegetated within the 25 feet, and then the upper portion, which would be loomed and seeded from there to the deck itself. So the whole thing would be revegetated in the area. I think this is a win-win, no-lose proposition that at least you're gaining as far as the encroachment within the 25 feet. Will now be beyond that, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Becky?
Okay. Lenny, just a quick question. Would they be able to do the helical pilings for the new structure?
We hope to utilize what's there, but if not, there would be some pilings that would be put in, but they obviously have to be hand dug and placed in a place where, if needed.
Okay.
But I don't think so. I think we'll utilize the existing footings for the deck itself.
That's already there. Okay. Great. So I think Lenny did a good job explaining the site and the project. We did go out and do a site visit last week. We had a couple questions, which I was able to speak with the engineer about afterwards. The site, it's a very well vegetated shoreline here all the way to the existing deck. I was happy to see that. So with the project, it will result in a new structure within the 50-foot buffer zone, but there is an existing structure there, and they have what I think is demonstrated trying to meet, 2-to-1 mitigation. So they've minimized the size of the structure, kind of pulling that out of the 25-foot buffer zone. I did ask about, mitigating for stormwater runoff there, especially being so close to the pond. They did come back and include the Cultec chamber unit in there. And then Lenny just did mention replanting within the 25-foot buffer zone there, which I think if you consider this project, we can condition that with some native planting similar to what's seen on site, maybe some mountain laurel shrubs, et cetera. And then he also mentioned loaming and seeding the other areas underneath the existing deck. So I think that this is something that you can consider. It wouldn't meet your no new structure setback, but they have shown and worked towards the mitigation. So for new structures within the 50-foot, you'd be looking for like a 2-to-1 mitigation. So I think with the addition of the Cultec, the replanting, the minimizing of the structure, also if they're using the existing footings, and then that greatly minimizes earth disturbance, and if they can use the pilings, that also is something that minimizes disturbance as well. So I would recommend considering granting the waiver and approving the project with those conditions.
Who went on site? I'd like to hear from them first.
I was on site. This is Eric.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Steve, you can go ahead.
Okay, Steve Halterman. I think that Lenny and Becky have made a good presentation of what we saw there, and I think the fact that it's in the same footprint and that there is a reduction of surface area and putting in the Cultec and using the same footings, I'm okay with this project.
Eric?
Yeah, I would agree. The lower deck just says that it's going to be enclosed. Lenny, can you just tell us how that's going to be enclosed? Is it going to be glass? Is it going to be screened in? What's the plan for that?
The lower deck, the side walls would be screened, and the top of the area, which is the roof part, would be a membrane, which would only drain off to the Cultec. So it's strictly a season room. It's not a year-round area to think about occupancy or anything. It's a 3-season room with screens.
Okay, that's what we suspected. So thank you for that explanation. Yeah, I'm good with the project. I think overall it improves the overall site. So at the end of the day, I think that meets the standard.
David?
I'm good with the project too, but I have a question for Becky. One of the things that you indicated, Becky, was that when Lenny was talking about revegetated, you just indicated loam and seed under the deck, and yet it's going to have that fabric over the deck, so there will be no sun getting to the loam and seed.
Yeah.
Would it not be better to have some other material under there, like gravel material or something, instead of frustrating the poor people and then having all of this stuff simply run off Wood Lake?
I think what he meant was in the footprint of the deck that's coming out. So within the footprint of the deck within the 25-foot, they'll replant, and then the rest of that 25 to 50 where the structure's coming out was loam and seed. Is that what you meant, Lenny?
Yeah, the lumen seating, which is actually going to be in that 9-foot envelope, which is distance between the new deck and the old deck, right up to the front of the deck itself. The bottom of the deck is already covered in there with stone and everything. That's going to stay as is.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen Chidester.
Yeah, thank you, Lenny, for drawing that back away from the lake. I appreciate that, and I don't have any problems with this.
I personally wish that I could have gone on a site visit. I tried. Didn't quite work out. I have a concern. When as a committee, we're quick to allow a deck, and then we're going to go deck to house, or a screened-in porch and then a house. I mean, that's a functional way of. Then they're going to come back next year and ask you if they could put a deck off the front. This is a hyperbole, I realize, but I think it's something that the committee has to be aware of as you move forward.
By the way, for members of the committee that haven't been on that long, what you should now recognize is that that was our chairperson speaking in his normal cynical way.
That's not cynical. That's experience.
We've seen that. Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, our issues generally of that process have to do with impervious surface and water runoff, and that's essentially reduced.
Has it? I didn't. As I said, I didn't see the site. So that this deck was not impervious. You're saying that the deck that exists today was not impervious.
No, it's got spaces between the boards.
So it's a pervious surface, and you're going to have a 28 by whatever impervious section with a roof on it. How's that an improvement?
So actually, I think Lenny clarified for me that in the office when we spoke about this, and maybe you can clarify that too, Lenny. You're saying that there's no roof structure that's going over the upper deck. It's just a membrane that goes underneath the deck, and that's what will drain to the Cultec unit. Is that correct?
The membrane unit is going on the 16 by 20 area down below, just to keep it dry where they're sitting. That's all it is. As far as the runoff from the existing deck to the proposed, it's going to be zero difference in that the existing deck right now is pervious, and the runoff that's coming off of the 16 by 20 foot area is going to be recharged into the Cultec area. So the obstruction in the area right there it's going to be negated because of the fact of the Cultec chamber, and it's actually going to be an improvement versus before you had the complete deck with the runoff going onto the site, which actually sheet flowed directly into the lake. At least now you're going into a chamber and having it absorb into the soil itself. The runoff actually on that roof is exempt from Wetland Protection Act in that it does not create any hardship or pollutants relative to runoff, and I think it's a win-win situation.
So just looking at the plan to clarify too, the roof, if you can see where my cursor is, the new roof overhang will go over the walkway on the side of the house, if you can see that.
That one,
yeah.
That there is just a shed roof for the walkway. That's all it is. It's going right back into the area.
I think that's where the confusion of the roof came in, is
right.
what I was trying to get at.
Someone like to make a motion?
Do we need to go to the public?
We need to do public comment.
Yep, good thinking. Yep, Jeff? Thank you for that.
Good evening. Would anyone like to speak to the Conservation Commission regarding the application for 106 South Shore Drive? Would anybody like to speak to the application on 106 South Shore Drive?
There's no public on the line.
No public on the line. Do I have a motion?
Is
Close the
there a
public
gas
hearing.
line motion to close the public hearing?
Do I have a second?
Steve Halderman, I second the motion.
Discussion? Hearing none. Eric, how do you vote?
To close the hearing, approve.
Stephen?
In favor of closing the public hearing.
David,
David Barnacle in favor of closing the public hearing.
Steve Halterman,
Steve Halterman in favor of closing the hearing.
and Ed Goodwin in favor of closing the hearing. Now do I have a motion?
David Barnacle will make a motion to approve DEP file number 300-1069 with the comments for order of conditions as indicated by the agent.
Do I have a second?
Steve Halterman, I second it.
I think you got it out.
I knew
first, Eric.
I knew I'd wait just long
All
enough.
right.
Right.
I know. Seconded by Steve Halterman. Discussion. All in favor? Eric.
Eric Gaspar, approve.
Stephen Chidesta.
Stephen Chittister, approved.
David Barnacle.
David Barnacle approved.
Steve Halterman.
Steve Halterman, I approve.
And Ed Goodwin, I abstain. All right. And we are at 6:30. 1 Cedar Pond Road. Notice of intent, notice of intent, I'm sorry. DEP file number 300-1070, C&J Cotton, owner and applicant. Lenny Jalbert, Jalbert Engineering, representative. Garage addition to existing single-family home. Lenny, you're on.
Yes, good evening again. We're on to the property located at 1 Cedar Pond Road. Basically, what is actually going to take place there is putting on a 24 by 24 foot attached garage, which is located westward from the lake and is actually buffered from the existing structure that's there now. In the process of doing this, what we actually have is there's a shed located on the portion of the site, which is side of Cedar Pond Road. That trailer.
Yeah, but we have an interference problem.
Yeah, caller 10, someone's calling in. There it goes. All right, go ahead, Lanny.
Hello.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, the trailer would actually be removed from the site, and the work that's going to take place on here actually is twofold in that the footings for the garage would be placed on the site, but there'll be drip edges on both sides of the garage to take any of the runoff from the garage itself. Also, work would be done on the replace the existing foundation, which is on the easterly side, which actually abuts the property on that side. And the reason for that is that the footings themselves do not have proper frost covering, and they're non-conforming to code restrictions. We should have a 4-foot minimum frost cover. And that side there was never done, which is going to be replaced, which will be part of the garage construction. What actually takes place here is that we were going from roughly a 17% coverage on the site to a 20% coverage. What it actually does is it is non-conforming relative to the Zoning Board of Appeals in that the coverage on this lot should be 15%. We went before the Zoning Board of Appeals with a public hearing on the property, and it was approved to the affirmative by the Zoning Board of Appeals that construction of the garage and the allowance of the 20.44 foot coverage would be approved. So we are now approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The property itself is now serviced by town water and town sewer, and the habitable area of the building is not going to change. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, Becky?
All right, thanks, Lenny. I think you gave a good description of the project. I did go by the site and provided some photographs for you to look at. The proposed garage structure is located at the 100-foot buffer zone within an existing developed driveway area. And then it does include a drip strip for mitigation of roof runoff there. And then the work for the replacement to the existing foundation, to me, that would appear minor in scope, and with proper conditioning of erosion controls, which is shown on the plan, wouldn't be of a concern. I didn't have any concerns with the site when I went by, and I think that this is an approvable project, and I'd recommend that you approve it. We include our typical conditions. One of them would be obviously the removal of excavated material off the site, and erosion controls and protection of any stockpiling during work. That's it.
Okay. Who would like to speak first? Eric?
No comments. I'm good with the project.
Comments? Stephen?
I'm good with the project, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, Steve Halterman, I'm fine with this project.
Dave Barnacle?
Mr. Talbot, have you any idea what the water table level is at that site? I'm thinking that there may be a reason that the current footings don't meet the requirements of the current regulations. And it might be because the water table's higher than 4 feet from surface area.
That's not true. What actually took place is the house is one of the things that was done in the 50s, and they just did a typical footing area. The property itself is all Class 1 material, which is well drained material. The water table is way below 8 feet below, where if you took at the lake elevation itself is at 575, and if you looked at the elevation up near the what is it up in here? 582, which the ground elevation there is 7 feet above the water table of the lake itself, and that the lake elevation is actually the mean high water, which it's actually lower than that at this particular time. So water table had nothing to do with the construction. It was just the construction was done at a time where people didn't feel that the 4-foot frost cover was necessary.
Thank you.
All right. I don't have any comment.
Public comment.
Do we have public? Jeff?
Good evening. Does anyone want to speak to the application 1 Cedar Pond Road? Anybody want to speak to the application for 1 Cedar Pond Road?
No public comment.
All right. Having do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Halterman,
Yeah,
I move
motion
to
to
close the public hearing.
That
Eric
was
Gasper,
Eric first.
second.
I got Eric Gasper first. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I'll second it.
Hey,
Next time. Do I have a second?
I'll
Do I
second
have a
it.
second?
Steve Halterman.
All right.
Yes, Steve Halterman.
Steve Haldeman seconds. All right. Discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing? I'll start with Eric because he feels it's slighted. Go ahead, Eric.
Eric Gaspar in favor.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
David Barnacle?
David Barnacle in favor.
And Steve Haldeman?
Steve Halterman in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Do I have a motion?
David Barnacle will make a motion to approve the notice of intent, EP file number 300-1070, located at 1 Cedar Pond Road with the normal indications for an order of conditions from the agent.
Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second it. Eric Gaspar.
All right, Eric seconds it.
Steve, you're next.
Discussion. Any discussion? All right. Eric, are you in favor?
Eric Gaspar in favor?
Stephen Chidester.
Stephen Chittister in favor?
David Barnacle.
David Barnacle in favor.
Steve Halterman.
Steve Halterman in favor?
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Yep. Take care.
You too, Lenny. Stay safe.
We are at 645, and we are in the eastbound lane of I-84, MM2. Notice of intent and wetland restoration, DEP file number 300-1071. E. Nugent, UPS applicant. J. Scherzanowski, Rue Associates, Inc., and Representative Mass DOT, owner, wetland restoration following IRA activities. That's a throwback, huh, David? IRA activities?
Well, I guess.
I'll tell you what, we better be careful.
The north and the
I
south
know.
are at it again.
All right, so we
Jason,
do.
are you,
Go ahead.
who's going to speak?
This is Jason Krasnowski with Rue Associates. Just not sure how you guys want to proceed. If there's something we should pull up on screen, or if Becky Gendro has anything.
Yeah, Jason, did you say you had a?
What do you want?
Did you have something that you want to put on to share?
We can. I have my work colleague Kyle is here. I don't know if he's going to put up the a couple slides that'll help walk us through.
Yeah, if you can, that'd be useful. Otherwise, I can pull up the application and put up some of the images for the restoration that you have, if that's useful.
Who wants to be
Becky,
presented?
let's see what he's got.
So let me, I guess I'll
ahead.
share my screen on here.
Becky, you
That's
guys make it.
Jason.
Jason?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
We're going to give you the ability to present, Jason.
There you go.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just trying to navigate to the
No problem.
there.
No problem.
So just while Jason's looking for that, I can just give a quick summary here. So this is, this project is the result of an accident on Route 84 that happened last year. We were immediately notified of the accident and contacted by Rue Associates for that cleanup activity. We did give emergency authorizations for the cleanup activities. There were some challenges presented with the location being the eastbound median is where the accident occurred. I did go out there once with Jason to view the site after some of the initial remedial activities occurred. There was a few different times where they went out for remediation, but reaching the site and getting access and state police to be able to go out there to do the restorations, and COVID presented some challenges. But they've submitted the notice of intent. I'll let them go into that, but what we're mostly looking at here is their plan for restoration and replication of wetland areas that were impacted by the accident. There's a little bit more of remedial activities that they need to do as well. Are you ready, Jason?
Yep, yeah, I'm ready. I think I got the screens figured out. Thank you, Becky.
Oh, no problem.
So that's a good summary. So about a year ago, UPS had a tractor trailer spill. About 100 gallons of diesel fuel was lost. The cleanup began immediately after the accident. and between two kind of rounds and right after it, the day of, and then in October, we took out about roughly 100 tons of soil in emergency response. We had vacuumed off the water while we were doing the work, and we have little absorbent booms kind of set up out there. We've done some soil sampling and testing. We've definitely made progress in the cleanup, given that it is a wetland, and when you look at the surrounding area, this is kind of a drinking water protection area. So the cleanup goals are a little more stringent that we're trying to get to. So we're close, and we just basically want to do a little more cleanup to remove a couple of localized areas where the soil still has some residuals. They're not really high. They're just kind of right above the Mass DEP thresholds that we compare to. But we want to get some of that out of there to make sure that when we put the wetland back together, that we can permanently close this with the Mass DEP. So just walk through here. So I think we've covered some of the incident kind of locations near mile marker 2 on 84 eastbound. Photo here is the day of the accident. You can see the excavator down in the wetlands. You know, tricky access to get in there for sure. Some of the conditions. This is the wetland area where the truck went, and this kind of area down here is kind of like where we've been working. It was mostly kind of muck and wetland stuff, and we kind of pulled that out and we started working up slope here, and we're kind of more focused on this area, which is kind of up on the slope, just to finish some of our cleanup work and then obviously restore the resource area. So here's some of the boom containment on the day of, and we've kind of changed that and maintenance it over time. Some of the work going on. We set up erosion control, silt fence, hay bales, things like that. This is kind of some of our sample and analysis that we've done. We've kind of tested about roughly 18 samples. A lot of them are clean. There's a couple right around here on the edge that we're going to focus our next round of. We'll do some more testing as we clean it up and go from there. Then we just, basically the NOI is to do additional cleanup. We'll do soil samplings to confirm that we've reached our cleanup goals with Mass DEP. And then we'll stabilize the site. Obviously pending this hearing and the outcome, we'll look to start work pretty quickly. And we'll probably stabilize the site this fall and be looking to kind of do the plantings and things like that in the springtime. So it is Mass DOT property, so we have to do an access agreement with them, application and permit, so that we don't expect too many hurdles with that. But they just asked, when we put it back together, what's the result going to be? And we've surveyed out here, and we're going to restore the area and the grades and kind of make it like it once was. So there shouldn't be any loss of flood control. In the NOI, the application, we have a seeding and planting plan to, put soil back in, and then obviously some plants that are native. We have the jute mats for erosion control to go in as well. The NOI itself details the types of trees. I'm not going to speak to the trees and stuff like that, but we'll put back in. And, obviously we'll maintain our erosion controls out here like we have. This is kind of our anticipated schedule where, pending the hearing, we'll look to engage someone like Clean Harbors, most likely come out and do the work this fall, stabilize the site, and then, we'll keep an eye on and monitor, make sure conditions are stable, and then we'll be looking in the spring to kind of put it back together. This is just kind of our contact information should you guys need it. So with that, if anybody has any specific questions you want to delve into, I'll just open it up.
Gentlemen, David?
One question. What percentage, approximately, of the 100 tons of material that you took away came from within the pond?
I would say probably at least 75%. And when we arrived on site after the accident, Mass DEP was out there first. Clearly, they had to pull the wreckage out of there and start work. The excavator was already in there, and it wasn't entirely like surface water. It was mostly muck. There was some water, basically right at the surface. As we started pulling that muck back, clearly it's a wetland. The pond kind of formed. But I would say what we pulled out of that was probably, roughly 75% of the tonnage right now.
And thank you.
Anybody else? Eric?
No question.
Stephen?
Yeah, he answered my questions in his presentation, so I'm good.
Steve?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if you were talking in past tense or when you were talking about future tense. So you went in and you pulled out what you thought was a contaminated soil, and that's determined by taking a sample of the soil that's left. And there's mass regulations for how low. It used to be TPH. I'm not sure what you're looking at now. It's been a while. But anyway, and you keep on cleaning it out until you reach that number. It used to be something like 0.1 parts per million kilograms, so on, of TPH. And when you reach that, you're done. And I don't understand if you said you were actually going to take some more samples, or I'm just if you would kind of go back through that in terms of the protocol for soil removal, targets, and then restoration. That's my first question.
Yep. So to speak to that, Steve, so it's EPH now. It's a very similar test analysis. So when we look at that, our EPH levels are below the regulatory thresholds. There's some individual compounds specific to fuel that are just above. They're like one of the concentrations is the level is 4, and we're at like 4.4. In addition to the soil, there's also issues that we have to address besides soil concentrations to make the case for a permanent solution with Mass DEP. And some of that is the stability. When you have those levels, there's a little bit of odor. We run a field meter on it. Even though the soil is testing not too egregious, it is a sensitive area. So we feel that we don't want to have any type of sheen show up in the wetland after we restore it. That's why we've maintained the booms out there. So there's a couple goals, not only the soil concentration, but it is kind of the longer term. Will those trace levels, even though they're at or below a regulatory threshold, is it enough that could possibly generate a sheen? And that's something we want to avoid, putting the wetland back together and also, you see a sheen. So the other aspect that we're required in the MCP, the regulatory guidance there, is we have to make an argument. Is it feasible to achieve or approach background conditions? And, that's basically what would the site be in the absence of our spill? Granted, it's the side of a highway with some roadway runoff, so it's not like zero. But given, the wetlands accessibility and the wetlands work is one challenge, but in the scheme of it, working on that slope coming uphill, it is pretty feasible to do a little more work to make sure we're cleaning the site up to what meets the standard of care in the MCP.
And your second question?
Well, it has to do with timing.
Yeah, that was one.
It happened a year ago. It happened a year ago, and you went in there with an emergency approval from us, and of course the state was already there. I don't get why this thing is still going on, and why. I mean, obviously you don't have to go to zero as far as your concentrations, and I'm confused by this whole thing. I mean, I've done this kind of work myself, and I never have done anything quite like this. It's drawn out, and I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I don't get it. Could you walk me through why we're going to be doing restoration 2 years after the event happened?
So it's.
Why are we doing?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, we have to look at our information, our data, and say, is it clean enough? And advise our client, should we go forward with the restoration, or should we try and do a little more cleanup before we do it? We don't want to encounter any issues, so there's a lot of, we have to look at it from a risk characterization, not only human health, but ecological as well. So there's an analysis component of that to not, rush through it. Clearly, when we got into the winter and stuff, we were looking to try and do some stuff over this past, winter, and then everything kind of hit a halt for a stretch of time because of the COVID-19 thing, and we had to regroup and, get back out here.
Well, just my own personal experience of being an environmental manager for a company that managed to spill a lot of stuff. The things you're saying to me sounds. I'm sorry. I just think that's it's just not the way that thing should have been run. Where, you dig out the soil, you take some samples, you pay an extra few bucks to get the sample analysis done more quickly than normally would be. You get the results, you look at it, you go back out, you dig out more soil. It becomes a wetland issue. That's like the horror story of spills if it gets into water. Yeah, there's a sheen. You throw down some mats on that water, the absorbent pads, and you just keep digging that stuff out of there until it's gone, and there might be a sheen left, and you throw down some pads. I hate to tell you, how to do your business, but I would have been fired. Sorry. Anyway, but it's done, it's passed, and I don't get why, all these things you say. You're talking to somebody who has done this. So I know the times that it takes, and I know the pressure that's on to get that stuff out of there and remediate that, and it just disturbs me that that's going to sit for another year. So anyway, those are my 2 cents worth.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. What? Jason, this is a good one. My follow-up is this: you're going to do further excavation this fall and then leave it open all winter?
Right, because we basically have to stabilize it with erosion controls. Nothing like if we plant in the winter, they probably won't take or survive, or in the late fall.
So just to clarify, Jason, you guys are going to put the seed mix down this fall and then come back and do the plantings in the spring. Is that correct? Because you could do a seed mix.
We could do that.
Yeah, you could do a seed mix and throw an erosion control blanket over it. We've seen that done on a lot of sites.
I missed that. Was that in the plan?
It should. Yes, it should be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That answers my question then.
Great.
Do you, anything further? Gentlemen, anybody? Eric?
Did we get Becky's comments on this?
Yep.
Beck?
Yep. So, I went through it. I've been involved since the beginning, and, just to add, there are a lot of constraints to access to the site, and then COVID did happen. But, I thought that the plan presented for the wetland replication and the upland restoration, I thought it was very thorough. I reviewed DEP's comments. This is a limited project because it's from an accident. With that, they need to provide a one-to-one wetland restoration, which is included in here, excuse me. I think that they're addressing the issue out there. Yes, and maybe it took a little bit longer than we would like to see, but I think moving forward, I think their proposal meets the standards, and I'd recommend approving it, and that way we can issue a permit and that they can get out there this fall and finish the last of the remediation they need to do so we can get that restored out there.
With that note, do I have Jeff, could we check the public?
Good evening. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak to I-84 eastbound MM2 wetland restoration? Good evening. Is there anyone that would like to speak about the I-84 eastbound wetland restoration?
No public comment.
No public comment. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Before we move on,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman, can we ask one more
Go
question?
ahead. Hold on. Who's speaking?
Article.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious, since you're going back out there in the spring to do the restoration planting, is it your intention to take another test of the water quality at that time to verify in fact that the subsoils, which you admitted are mostly muck, have not exuded more of the improper materials?
Yeah, so that's something we could consider doing, as we look to do closure. We did test the water after the spill, and the water was below drinking water levels. But that is probably something that we'll look at to do again, just to confirm that it still remains the same, to have kind of some temporal data over time to make the case for a closure.
So my difficulty with your answer is possibly. You said you could possibly do that.
Yep.
That wasn't the answer that I wanted.
We can sample the water again to have that data, so we will.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead, please.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to push it along. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Halterman, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Gaspar, second.
All right. We have closed the public hearing. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Mr. Barnacle?
David Barnacle in favor.
Steve Halderman?
Steve Halterman in favor.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
And Eric Gaspar?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Do I have a motion?
Take a motion that we approve notice of intent and for wetland restoration, DEP file number 300-1061 for the I-84 eastbound MM2 with appropriate indications from the agent, including the fact that there will be one more set of test data provided after the replication is completed in the springtime.
Great. Do I have a second to that?
Eric Gaspar, second.
Great. Discussion? Any further discussion?
Yeah, real quick, that was 1071, not 1061, for the record.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay,
Nice catch, Steve.
great. Thank you.
Not a problem.
All right. So going forward with that, do we have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. We can start out with Eric.
Eric Gaspar, approved.
Stephen?
Stephen Chittister, I approve.
David?
David Barnacle, I approve.
Steve?
Steve Halterman, I approve.
And Ed Goodwin, I approve. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
everybody.
right, now we are on
Jason.
to...
Thank you, Rebecca.
Don't have a time on 246 Holland Road. Why is that picked?
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
Just checking to see if you're noticing. 7 o'clock.
I know it must be 7 o'clock. All right. 246 Holland Road, notice of intent, DEP file number 300, TBA, unless, David, do you have that too?
Oh, we do have that now. Actually, that
Jay
did
Hardy,
come,
owner.
so that did come in
right,
right
give it-
after
can you give it me?
we posted. It's 1072.
1072. All right, Jay Hardy,
makes
owner,
sense.
applicant, and M. Farrell, Green Hill Engineering representative, construction of a single-family home and associated site work. Mark, how you doing?
This is Jim. Mark is not with us tonight.
Oh, okay. All right. Jim? Well, go ahead.
So,
Jim, what's your full name? Jim,
Jim Harity.
okay, all right.
Jim, I'm going to put
Owner, all right.
I'll put the plan up if you want to talk about it. I'm going to zoom out a little bit though. Yeah.
So as you can see, it's a single family that's down the hill a little bit, and it's a 3-bedroom septic design located behind the house, and looks it's pretty straightforward. The only thing is Becky, do you want to talk about the
Sure.
stormwater requirements?
Yeah, so this is the third lot that we're seeing from this property. We did review 2 previous ones, individual single-family houses last year. With this filing, we did see that there's 5 lots that are proposed here. So anything over a 4-lot subdivision of a property does trigger the Massachusetts stormwater standards. So they will have to, there was some discussion about, maybe doing 4 lots instead of 5. The property owner has considered that and he'd like to move forward with the 5. So they do need to submit the stormwater checklist and drainage analysis for this property, as well as we'll have to discuss how to address the 2 properties that are been constructed at this point, but their permits aren't closed out too. So that's kind of outstanding at this time. So Jim did want to come on to the meeting. When this came in, I did note that, so we didn't go out for a site visit at this time. It's my understanding they'll be working on addressing the stormwater for these properties. So this, if he's going to be asking, I was recommending a continuation to our next meeting. That would give them time to submit those materials. And then we can go out and do a site visit to this property too.
Sounds good. Any comments from members of the board? David?
Well, we need to find out if the applicant wants a continuation or not.
The agent said that he did. So,
Yes,
Jim, you
Yes, I
Yeah,
am
okay.
seeking a 2-week
a continuation.
Yeah, actually, Jim, the
great.
next meeting is 3 weeks, so it'd be October 6th.
Right.
Yep. With the site visit, like we talked about earlier today, would be the 29th. Just make sure that Mark marks out all the things that we require, where the limit of work is, and the house, and where the driveway is entering, kind of exactly what he did for the last properties.
Right.
All right.
So I guess my question
Go ahead.
would be about lots 1 and 2, because I don't own them anymore. So how does that work?
Well, I haven't seen this come up before. I mean, you still have there is an open permit on both those properties. The commission hasn't closed those out yet. I think we're going to have to seek some guidance from DEP on that, but I guess that we'll have to find out what they recommend on how to move forward with that. But if they do say that, you have to mitigate for stormwater on those properties, it might be something where the permit has to be amended to have that done, and how that gets worked out with the new property owners would have to get figured out. But I think at this point, I think we're going to have to refer to DEP on guidance for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome.
Hey, not having any comments from the board. And Jeff, did you
I have
check
a
the
quick
audience?
question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Becky, I'm assuming there's a lien on the properties because of this open permit?
Yeah, so the permits are
1 and
still
2?
recorded on the deed. So that technically, yes, that is considered a lien on the property.
That's what I meant. Okay, so then we're within our right then to go ahead and have this stormwater issue addressed, even though it's not on Mr. Harity's ownership anymore.
Yeah, I believe,
you know,
I believe so.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it
All
before.
right.
And
Jeff, could you check to see if anybody in the audience would like to speak?
this is Jim. I just have just one thing, which is an interesting phenomenon here is, you know, on lots 1 and 2, we worked really hard to make sure there was no, you know, breaches or anything to get in there. And now with these stormwater requirements, because nothing's flowing towards the road, everything slopes away from the road. Now there won't be any water going into your wetland area, which could conceivably dry those areas up now. Just, you know, interesting and maybe a variable to consider.
Yeah, and I think that, you know,
Maybe it is.
your engineer has to go through the standards, and when he goes through the standards, I mean, not talking about if water isn't reaching the resource area now, but we'll go through the standards and show, and if he's showing that, you know, you have infiltration on the site and recharge and all those things, there might not be things that you have to do. I'm not saying that there won't be, but I'm not saying that there's things that you necessarily have to do on those properties. You might have to, but what the goal is that you show that you can meet the standards that are required by DEP. So.
Right.
And also too.
I think he's looking at infiltrators for the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the goals is recharging groundwater. You know, you went from a forested site, which has a lot of infiltration, you know, from the trees and the leaf litter and the ground and everything like that. So you probably didn't have a ton of runoff going to the wetland, but you had recharge into the groundwater, which, you know, helps with the wetlands too. So that's the goal.
Sure. Okay.
All right. I am interested in a proposal to.
Oh, we'll go to
this.
public comment.
I thought we did that and we didn't get any.
No, I think Jim
No?
had a comment. Jim had a comment before we went to it.
Hey,
Okay, is there
Okay,
anyone?
Jeff?
Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak to 246 Holland Road? Anyone on the phone that would like to speak about 246 Holland Road?
No public comment.
Thank you. Hearing none. I'd like to vote on a continuation. Steve Haldeman.
Steve Haldeman, I approve a continuation.
All right. Dave Barnacle.
Dave Barnacle approves of a continuation.
Eric.
Eric Gaspar, approve of a continuation.
Stephen Chidester.
Stephen Chittister, I approve of the continuation.
And Ed Goodwin, I approve of a continuation. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay, so let's continue to October 6th at 8 o'clock.
All right. We are now at 7:15, 20 Goodrich, request for determination of applicability, P&M Hartpence, owner applicant, driveway repaving and a tree removal. All right. Beck?
That's up.
Tim and Mary are here. Do they want to, or are you represent?
No, we have no representation. We represent the house.
Okay. Becky, you went out there. You want to?
Yep, yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the site plan. So I can give a general overview, and if there's anything, Tim and Mary, that you want to add, feel free to add in. So let me just share my screen. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so this is the site plan. So this is a property on Lead Mine Pond, existing two-bedroom house here. There is an existing driveway which goes down a slope. We did do a site visit out here last Thursday. It is a paved driveway in pretty poor condition. Their goal is to repave the driveway. They will be adding like a riprap swale along the side, which will help pick up anything coming off the hillside here. And then they do have an existing parking area down here. And one of the other things too is just the tree removal that occurred on site. So the property owners, I'm just going to pull up the second plan, which has got the trees on it here. Property owners did hire a contractor to come out and do some limbing and removal of a couple of either hemlock or pine trees on the property. The contractor informed the property owners that permits weren't required, so they thought they were all set. I mean, I did receive notification that that work was occurring out there, so I did stop at the property, met with the contractor and the property owner at the time, and went over that. At that time, you know, they were done the limbing of the trees, and it was just removal of 3 smaller pine or hemlock trees. I did talk to them about the requirements for it, and, you know, they're aware of that now. They immediately addressed my concerns and submitted the RDA and kind of an after-fact tree removal, which we included as this one application. When I was out there, I did make a recommendation because there is a lot of trees in the area and canopy because of the removals that you typically look for some type of replacements. There was one area where I thought that some shrub plantings, which is right in this general area, would be a good addition onto the property. So they did include, they had the removal of the 3 noted on here hemlock trees. They are replacing and adding 4 high bush blueberries here. So with the driveway and kind of the after-fact removal of the trees, I don't have any concerns. Definitely recommend including the replacements that they have offered to do as a condition for that. And then also too, we would ask that and condition it to include erosion controls while they're doing that work. It is a very steep driveway and a very steep road above that that does have a lot of washout and drainage concerns, but we can, you know, condition that project pretty easily with erosion controls while they do that work, and then obviously the proper removal and disposal of the asphalt from the property too. And that's all I have. Tim and Mary, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, the driveway is going to be done in one day,
Okay.
so I'm not sure whether we need erosion controls for something like that or not.
Okay, so.
Were you talking about the pole that's up above, Becky?
Oh, no, I just meant for while they're doing your driveway, but we've done that before too. I actually had, you know, I think it was the same contractor who recently did another driveway that was permitted in town. And the same thing, they were able to do everything in one day. So even I had previously conditioned it and was able to kind of modify that based off of being able to do the work in one day. So I wouldn't anticipate that as a concern.
One day, and they will haul away all of the old pavement that they scrape up.
Okay.
All right. Any comments from the board?
This is Eric Gaspar. I'm okay with the project. That's one hell of heck of a steep driveway. I apologize to the interested party. But the contractor who did the work, we did formalize a warning or a complaint or a letter to this contractor to make sure that this does not happen again. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We did send a letter out.
Who is the contractor? Becky, who is the contractor? I'm not aware of this.
Hold on, I don't have it in front of me, but I can find it. Tim, do you have the name of his company real quick?
Tree works? Are you talking about the tree work?
Yeah.
Yes. That's the guy. Lansing was the guy's name. I can tell you.
Yeah, it was David Lansing, Tree Works.
Yeah, so I did send them a letter.
He needed a permit for limbing, and that's why we were proceeding with that. And the trees that we took down were dead trees that were two of them jeopardizing our septic system.
Yeah, it was Tree Works. Last part of
RRX.
Yeah, so I did.
All right, thank you.
I did send them a letter kind of summarizing, what happened out there and the need for permitting for those activities. And then also I included language, that they can easily contact our office and email or call to find out if a property does have a permit or if a project does need it. And that obviously, I have the ability to quickly go out and review something where there's deceased vegetation that needs to be removed and turn a permit right around for people. So I did explain the, system we have set up to kind of address some of these things and to help them out to understand the compliance that they need to stay with. And also did say that was their written warning, so.
Hey, I got a question.
Thank you.
Oh, question. Once the road is paved, will it need to be inspected?
So,
Driveway's paved,
yeah, I usually
the
for.
inspection involved?
Yep, so usually for these permits, I do put in there just to notify us so we can do a final inspection and close out your permit, and that's something that I can come out and do.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Do I have a motion to, well, Jeff, do we have anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this?
Good evening. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak to 20 Goodrich Drive? Anybody that would like to speak to 20 Goodrich Drive?
No one on the line.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Steve Haldeman.
Eric Gaspar.
Steve Alderman? Okay.
Second. Second, Eric Gaspar.
Second, Eric. All right. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Eric?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
Okay. Stephen? Chidester?
Stephen Chitster in favor.
David?
David Article in favor. The competition is on.
And Steve Halderman.
We've got a better
Steve Haldeman in favor of,
And Ed Goodwin in favor.
closing the hearing.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the requested determination of applicability for 20 Goodrich, which includes the driveway repaving project and the subsequent, the already completed tree removal.
Do I have a second?
Steve, you're not looking at your computer. I was pointing at you. Eric Gaspar, second.
Okay.
Sorry,
All
I
right,
missed that.
Discussion.
Yeah, I have a quick question. The issue of the erosion control, I know it's just going to take one day. You might just, for safety's sake, ask that contractor has some erosion control material. Wattle would do on the site, because.
All right. Are you recommending that we put it in the order of conditions?
No.
This is closed, so what we're doing now is, we're not talking to the applicant, and the applicant's not talking to us. We're
So I guess I can.
making an order.
Oh, okay, the hearing.
Yeah.
What is it we're discussing then when you ask for discussion?
Where discussion could be something for the order of conditions. So you can.
Okay.
I'm just saying address the group.
Oh, that's an excellent point. I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Okay, Becky, I recommend that the order of conditions says the contractor should have in his possession enough erosion control material in case, because we are in New England, that it starts raining in the process, and he doesn't have to put it down. And if it looks like it's going to start raining, I mean, it's happened to me, and that's what I've had to do. So that's not a big deal.
Okay. Just as a reminder, this is a determination. This is a determination, and just for the numbers for the determination, my recommendation would be a positive 2B, no resource area delineation approval. Positive number 5, subject to the local bylaw, and then negative number 3 with conditions. So I can note the erosion control conditions for if it does start raining, or if work for some reason takes
Right.
more than one day, they put them up. And then also, you can just add in the replanting of the 4 high bush blueberries that they had offered to plant.
Good point.
Great.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Going to vote. Eric?
Eric
How do you
Caspar,
vote?
approve.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chittister, I approve.
David Barnacle?
David Barnacle approves.
Steve Halterman?
Steve Halterman, I approve.
And Ed Goodwin approves. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John.
We are now,
Thank you.
thank you. We're all set. We are now to Becky for permit extension request.
Yep, so this is DEP file number 300-0999. This is 103 Shore Road. This is a project that is mostly completed. The property owner has indicated that they haven't put the deck up yet and completed the wall repairs. He's asking for a 1-year extension for that project. I don't see any concerns with that and recommend issuing a 1-year extension.
All right. Do you have any discussion? We have approval for a 1-year extension. Eric, how do you vote on 1 year?
Yeah, Eric Caspar. I'm okay with it.
Stephen?
Stephen Chittister, I approve the 1-year extension.
David Barnacle?
David Barnacle approves.
And Steve Halderman?
Steve Halterman, I approve the extension.
And Ed Goodwin, I approve the 1-year extension. All set, Beck?
Yep. Thank you.
I haven't seen Fred. Is Fred on the line, or? Haven't seen Fred in a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a while either. He did come into town hall once and went to one of the other departments, but otherwise I haven't seen him.
Yeah. You want to update us on the center at Hobbs Brook? Or is there someone here for that?
Yeah, we do have the project team that we spoke to at our last meeting on here again, and they did put another presentation together for you. I can pull that up, and I'll let them kind of take the lead on it. Are you guys there?
Yes, thank you, Becky. And thanks again, seriously, for having us. And, as we found out this week, you guys are very on time, and so I can only imagine how bad we pushed you off of time 2 weeks ago. So apologies about that, because I'm very impressed that the agenda, you guys are right on it.
No, Philip, you can't take one meeting and figure something like that out.
Oh, fair. Okay.
I can assure you there are times we're way off.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
We can go through these first. We repeated a lot of slides. We did add a little bit more additional information based on some comments and questions. So again, here's kind of the overview of the project location. Go ahead and move to the next one, Becky. Again, where the wall sits, just some of the spacing. I think we talked about this in detail last time, just how there is obviously a pretty limited buffer from the existing wall to the wetlands. Go ahead. The option that we presented last time, which remains our preferred option, is the geosynthetically confined soil wall. You can skip ahead to the next slide. This is, of course, not changed. What we found was that we had, even after our proposed wall, which would be 10 feet in front of the existing wall, we would have a minimum of, so these numbers are a little bit misleading because we're adding 5 feet for construction activities. So there would be 8 feet from the new wall to the wetland. During construction, we estimate we would be 5 feet. And so you'll see the first bullet, the minimum space during construction would be 3 feet. And that would be at the absolute pinch point. The average would be 8.5 during construction, and then after construction, it would be 5 feet greater at 13.5 feet from the new location of the face of the wall to the wetland that was delineated by our biologist just a couple weeks ago. So you want to skip ahead to the next one? So again, we showed you this last week, but we would be putting this wall 10 feet in front of the existing wall, and we'd be filling in with the backfill the space in between. So that's the design concept here, if you want to skip ahead, Becky. So one of the questions that came up last meeting was specifically about clearing and kind of what we thought that might look like for this option and the option that we have as an alternate here. One of the major pros, one of the major advantages is that the construction is really confined much to the space. And I know we showed you photos. We'll look at that again here in just a minute from 2 weeks ago. But we're working on the top end of the new wall. So most of the actual construction activities are in the 10 feet between the existing wall and the new wall. So really the area that we need for activities, for construction activities, would be the 10 feet for the new wall and about 5 feet beyond that. So a total of 15 feet. And we would need to clear all the way from the gravel kind of private road. And we would clear a path that gets us down to the bottom of the wall. So here's our estimate. We went 5 feet beyond the back. So if you look at the very top, we have a little dimension that says 5 feet. But we think the total clearing is about 521 square yards of space. If you go ahead, Becky. And then here are the photos in the next slide that, again, just kind of show you some real photos of the action, right, of an install, where you can see where the construction equipment and all of the construction is really happening in that confined space between the two walls. So as soon as that wall starts getting built, again, we're trying to minimize, there shouldn't be any more than just a couple feet of impact from the new wall location to the wetlands. Once we get going, most of the activities happens within that 10 feet between and not on the wetland side of the new wall. Skip ahead. I'm going to let Justin talk about the next two slides. Again, as it relates to some of the questions that we wanted to try to address from two weeks ago on the freeze thaw, and then the next slide about the water kind of surrounding as the wetlands potentially move or expand moving forward. Justin, do you want to take over for these two?
Yeah, thank you. The figure 10 there on the left is really intended to show the height to which these walls can be constructed. You can see our founder there in the bottom for scale. And then I think the question was raised last week about the durability of the blocks to freeze thaw. So we just presented the same photo on the right in the winter just to kind of visually demonstrate the repeated freeze thaw cycles that they can endure. Go to that next slide there. Rapid drawdown and the potential for the wetlands to encroach on the footings, reducing the bearing capacity was also a question. This is a detention pond where frequent rapid drawdown is encountered. So, and also obviously the footings are engulfed in water. So that just wanted to visually kind of to show those a couple applications they make for bridge footings and are pretty durable in those applications. So just a couple of visual examples.
Justin, your wife got you taking care of the kids tonight, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening in there, but it's...
okay, I'm just kidding.
Great, thank you, Justin. So here's kind of the pros and cons as we see for the wall here. So it's less impact to landscaping. That will make more sense when we show you the second option, but the impact is really just a 15-foot trail from the existing gravel wall through to the wall and across the face of the existing wall, 15 feet. More confined construction zone, as those photos kind of showed, compared to what we will present as option 2. Provides lateral support to the existing wall and the slope behind the wall, right? So that new wall is taking all of the pressure and all the support of everything behind it, so it provides all that lateral support, internally and externally stable. And then I do want to apologize. I know afterwards, Becky and I had some emails back and forth with Mark, the owner, and I think I confused everybody on how I used the term failure. So I want to clarify, and I know we shared the report that Kimley Horn prepared in 2017. We believe that there are localized failures only, that there's not a global stability or any sort of major structural wall concerns. What we believe has been happening is that there's been very localized failures where the soil or the gravel underneath these large rocks has just been washed away with time. And so the very, very top layer of rocks, that's what we're seeing happening as those rocks have less resistance and the sand and the soil underneath them kind of wash away. Those rocks have been sliding off and falling off the top. So again, I apologize. I think I was unintentionally very confusing on the last call, but we do believe that there are very localized failures. The pro with this one is that we're totally eliminating, we're filling in that space, and we're going to be providing that soil between the walls to the full height of the existing wall. So there's going to be no ability for those future failures or those blocks to be able to slip off with this option one. And so that's what we say when we prevent future localized failures. Less impact to the existing center. All of the work is being done down by the walls. So there's really no construction equipment up by the actual tenants or the center themselves. You don't have to worry about a lot of traffic control up on the top end at the top of the existing wall. And then the avoids encroachment, I mean, obviously, if you look over to the cons, right, we still believe we have a minimum of 3, an average of 8 feet. But the cons really here, I think, as we all know, is we are reducing that wetland buffer 10 feet, right? So it's already pretty limited, and we're making it even smaller. And then the construction activities, while it is confined mostly to that space, there is a lot more going on much closer to the wetlands compared to the option we're going to present moving forward. And so those are the 2 cons that we know are very, very important. Okay, so let's jump to the next one and talk about option 2, which is our soil nail wall. This is where we're actually going to be doing a series of walls where we're going to eliminate the top half of the existing wall, grade back. So let's jump to the next one here. So this is tough to see in this kind of 2D plan view, but essentially where the existing wall exists today, we're going to eliminate half of that wall, or the top half, and we're going to grade back, and we're going to basically put a second wall up where you see the proposed wall. So the proposed wall is going to be much, much closer to the center itself. And if you skip ahead to the sketch here, I think it will help. Yep, so here's the sketch where on the left you can see the hand sketch where we point to the existing wall. We're removing the top portion. We're grading back at 2.5 to 1. And then where you see it start getting more vertical, the proposed wall, that's going to be a concrete, essentially shotcrete, vertical. And I think we've got some photos. There was a good one on the cover sheet for option 2. But we're going to install a new wall, so it will essentially be a series of walls much, much closer to the parking lot. So this is kind of the design concept for option 2. Yep, go ahead, Becky. So the clearing for this one, it's a little bit unfortunate that in order for us to, so we're going to be doing 2 things. We're going to be installing the new series of walls, or the new wall, and to do so, all of the clearing is going to have to happen on the top end of the wall. So the big chunk of crosshatch there at the top end. The reason why we continue that 15-foot stretch on the bottom is because a couple of the blocks have fallen, which have led to the discussions today. And we talked to GSI about, is there any way we can mobilize equipment on the top end of the wall and reach over and pick up those blocks? But in order for us to truly get those out of there, we're going to still have to get the equipment down to the bottom of the wall. So we're kind of double counting that 15 foot. That is still going to need to be cleared, just the same option 1 and option 2. But option 2 also has all of the clearing on the top end. So as opposed to the 500 some in option 1, we've got 1,600 square yards in option 2. Go ahead, Becky. So here are some photos. If you look at the top right, figure 19, that one does a good job. I think you can kind of see that shotcrete. I mean, that edge where that wall is going to be a concrete edge. The bottom left kind of shows them blowing in and installing the shotcrete in that wall construction. But what I also like about maybe the top left and the bottom right is that the majority or a lot more of the work is going to be able to be done on the top end. So what's going to happen is we're going to start at the top, actually utilizing the center and the pavement, right, the rear service drive for the tenants. And we're going to have the equipment with the excavator with the arm reaching over and starting to excavate. Now, as we excavate, we're going to end up having to create a road or create a path, and we're going to have to bench. So all of the construction is not going to be able to be done at the top. We're going to have to utilize that space that will be between the two walls. But the point is, all of the construction will be on the top end of the existing wall. And so that space in between, which is landscaping today, where we are clearing, will be basically creating paths and benching level areas for the equipment to sit as we excavate out for the new wall series. Next slide here, we're about done. And so this is the last slide, which is the pros and cons. The pros of option 2 really is that the majority of the work takes place behind the existing wall. So rolling right into option bullet 2, it really doesn't impact the wetland, or neither impact the wetland, but this has less likelihood of impacting the wetland. This also doesn't reduce the existing buffer that's there today. And it stabilizes, in addition to the series, what I didn't mention is that part of this design option is we're installing soil nails at the top part. So we're stabilizing the soil above with those nails as well. The cons, greater impact to the landscaping, right? So we saw the 1,600 square yards versus 500. It's a lot greater impact to the existing center during construction. We're actually going to have to utilize a lot of that rear service drive, utilizing traffic control and interrupting the deliveries. The other thing is it does not stabilize the existing retaining wall. So today we're seeing the localized failures and the top blocks falling off. While this minimizes and it reduces the height of the wall, the reality is half of the wall is still going to be the exact wall and the exact type of wall that exists today. And so it might not be 1 year, it might not be 3 years, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, at some point, we still run the risk of those localized failures of the soil underneath that top layer washing out and those top blocks still falling. And so when we think about what the root cause and the root problem here is, we're not entirely sure that option 2 solves the problem that we're trying to solve. The other last couple cons here, like I mentioned, we're still going to have to access the bottom of the wall to remove the fallen blocks that are there today. And the last thing, which is very important, is, of course, we would have a utility locate, we would get an underground locate, we would try to understand where all the utilities are. But those soil nails extend 30 feet back, and there is some concern that, as you guys likely know, the rear of buildings, the rear of these tenant occupied spaces are typically where a lot of the utilities are, and we do have some concern about the conflicts between the soil nails and the existing utilities. So I know that was quick. I was trying to be brief as possible. That does conclude our presentation portion. We certainly want to, I know we threw a ton at you and we didn't really give you a chance to review this option 2 ahead of time. Any questions that are immediate that you have right away, we'd be happy to answer. And then certainly we're willing to come back as you guys ponder over as needed a little bit more.
Becky, why don't you start, and then if you've got any comments, and then we'll go through the board quickly. That was a good presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting that together. One question: Do you need to have a pipe like this in your wall, or how are you going to deal with water behind the wall?
Yeah, Justin, I think when we talked, we were planning on just doing leaf hole, so I don't anticipate. But Justin, do you want to confirm I'm correct there?
So the backfill in the wall should be pretty free draining. It'll be the crust stone backfill, so it should drain pretty freely. If you had a surface water runoff concern, we could include a pipe like the one in the photo, which was the reason for that one. It had a parking area up there, an inlet or something there to drain it through that culvert. So that was a surface water condition, but for groundwater flow, I think we should be sufficient with the porosity of the backfill in the GCS.
Okay, I figured that pipe was not related to your wall, but I wanted to ask, so just to clarify for that. So, yeah, thank you for putting the presentation together. I mean, I think it did clarify kind of what my main question going into this, because I did, you know, you sent me this last night, so I did look at it a little bit today, and I reviewed the geotechnical report, but and Phil kind of clarified at the end here, but I guess my main question was if it's just the boulders on the top that are causing the failure, and it's just the top of the wall that's thought to fail, that you know, some of it has failed and some of it will fail, then why not, you know, looking at options of just getting the boulders and the large trees up there. I think that the geotechnical report said that the large trees up there, you know, we're probably adding to that as well. You know, what's the option of, you know, going in from behind and then removing that material and replacing that with a better fill that's more suitable for there. I mean, Phil kind of went in at the end that, you know, you said that you don't know with the rest of the material underneath there that it could continue to erode through the wall. So maybe that's a concern, but it would just seem that if it's just the boulders on the top and that material, then why not just address that and avoid the need for the big wall in the front, I guess. That was my main question kind of going into this.
Yeah. And I think you're right? I mean, it's happening now at the top layer, but if we reduce the height or we do anything to the top layer, we still anticipate that concern will exist. But the other thing I want to point out when we sent the geotech for PSI, you know, PSI is that we work with them all the time. They're very well renowned, you know, great company, national company. It's a geotech soil company. But, you know, their report was almost, and the reason why we only have an interim report and we never got to the final is because this was a head scratcher for all of us. I mean, this was a complicated issue here. And when we continued to have those conversations with PSI, we all kind of had throwing some ideas out there, going to the chalkboard. But we never really could figure out what exactly it looked like until we got our specialty contractor, GSI, on board. And the conversations with PSI ended with, we have an idea, but it's not feasible because in order to get the slopes and in order to shore down as far as cut down as far as we needed to cut, you know, when they did their soil calculations, they said that we would need to go back and excavate back all the way to like the building where we would have to remove all the soil behind the wall all the way back, not only to the guardrail, but even beyond. It impacts some of the paving and some of the existing infrastructure. And so their recommendation was you really need to get a specialty shoring company on board. And that's what led us to GSI, where we were able to more probably realistically, looking at the constructability, realistically come up with some options that would work, which is what kind of led us to these option 1 and option 2. So whereas I don't want to undersell, you know, PSI, they did everything we asked them for. Their scope of work was the borings and the soil stability testing. And to throw out some ideas to the chalkboard. And we took those ideas and we got with our contractor and came up with what we considered more realistic solutions to how we would actually install something.
Okay. I mean, I guess
This is Mark. A couple other things too. Kind of comment on top of that is that you can kind of see in some of the boring logs that in some of the locations, the drill and the board missile ended up only going down like 9 feet or so, and they were hitting some pretty large boulders. So there was still quite a bit of unknown as far as the true full depth of the existing backfill. And again, as Phil was starting to get into, you know, the repairs to remove, or the thought to remove the boulders and replace everything, or replace the backfill with suitable backfill material, basically would have involved trying to rebuild the entire wall, in which then you would have to put shoring in, and then based off of the composition of the existing soils there and the slopes to get something built, it would have to be benched. And then, yeah, as Phil was saying, we couldn't get the slope that is there now. It would have to be a lot steeper, which would cause us then having to go all the way back into the building and rebuilding not just this wall, but the entire slope, the pavement, getting in the utilities. We know for a fact that there's a fire line just on the back side of this curb. And so all of that, you know, is impacted with it still being, you know, a lot of these unknowns. And with the recommendation of PSI to touch base with the shoring contractor and a specialty contractor. Again, as how Phil alluded, we got in touch with GSI, and after them looking at everything, said, hey, here are some options that we could do without having to go back and rebuild the whole back of the site behind these buildings.
Okay. Yes, I guess my only other comment then is, I mean, it sounds like with the option 2 that you presented, you're raising a lot of concerns with leaving the existing wall, the bottom portion there, and that could also fail in the future too. So if, I mean, obviously option 2 minimizes disturbance closest to the wetland, which is primarily our concern. Anything behind the wall, I mean, that's, you know, pine trees that are growing up that, you know, probably moved into the area, and some landscaping planting that they have back there. I mean, that could be easily restored. So from, you know, face value, looking at both options, obviously, you know, I think that option 2 would be better for the wetlands. I mean, you do raise some concerns there, and if the wall is subject to failure, the lower portion, then that is a concern too. You know, if option 1 is the, you know, the only option, then it's something that, you know, I guess I'd recommend that the commission kind of consider both options there and what they think would be best for a resource area.
Ed, can I
All
comment?
right, why don't you? Who?
This is Stephen.
Who's Steve? Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, I've been on this site several times, and so my biggest concern is kind of maintaining the environment that we have currently. We have some really mature trees along the base of that wall. It's sort of like a sheltered environment right now, and I am really against going through there and clearing all those trees out. So, you know, I'm leaning towards option 2 for sure. And also, I would go further and say, if the only reason for clearing the path from that access road to the base of that wall is to remove the blocks that have already fallen down, I would say just leave those blocks in place and, you know, not do that tree clearing. So if that's an
I was
option,
thinking the same. This is Ed Goodwin. I was thinking the same thing. I don't see any reason to haul the blocks out of there.
Right.
And clear the area, you know.
Yeah.
They can become a part of the environment.
That definitely would help, and that would eliminate, you know, that really is the reason that we were showing that additional 15-foot path in option 2. The only other comment I'll make is, you know, when we had our environmental engineer out there, he you know, noted that there are, to your point, I apologize, I don't remember who was speaking for it, but yeah, the trees really are up along the wall. The wetlands themselves are actually pretty open, right? Pretty clear. There's not a lot of shade for the actual wetland. Most of the trees and most of the shaded kind of cover is in that area up against the bottom of the existing wall and in between that buffer. So I think the point is that, you know, in either option, you know, one thing that we would certainly be willing to do is work with the city on what that, you know, transition vegetation or what that restoration looks like, if it's replanting trees, if it's better upland type species. You know, he mentioned that he saw a couple things down there that actually concerned him with some invasive. I'm looking at my notes because I'm not a environmental, but he saw some purple loose strife, I think is what he called it. So I mean, that also provides us the opportunity to help clean some of that invasive stuff out and really work with the city to come up with whatever upland plants or trees that we want to replant as a restoration within that area.
Yeah, the problem is that there are just some very mature trees there. As you say, they're providing pretty much the only shade that we have in that part of the wetland. So I'm very against clearing any of those mature trees. And I think, as Becky pointed out, the trees that have grown on top of the wall, between the wall and the parking area, that's all, you know, basically stuff that's grown up recently, and it's easily replaceable, or, you know, whatever needs to be done with that. That's not, I don't think that's providing a lot of value to the wetland itself. So I'm for option 2.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm having a problem with option 2 in general. I have a lot of problems with option 1, but yeah, it is one of the cons. You know, the ultimate summation was, and we don't know if it will actually deal with the root cause of the problem to begin with. So why do we even have this plan in front of us if we don't know that it's going to address the root cause, which is that wall that is, well, I appreciate the clarification, Mr. Kaufman, but it was structurally sound but failing at the same time. So I guess I don't know if fully Plan 2 will actually address the root cause of the issue, but yet I like Plan 2 better, which is to say that I don't have any engineering degree to base this off of. But it just seems to me that we should have another option in front of us that we are pretty sure that actually addresses the root cause of the problem and doesn't put us in a situation where we have to go within 3 feet of the wetland for this to happen. I mean, we have that 25-foot no touch for a reason. So anyway, just my opinion that I don't even know that option 2 really satisfies what the root cause is and takes care of it.
Yeah, this is Mark again. And it is kind of, I guess, say unfortunate in the sense that, you know, option 1 that encroaches on the wetlands the most is really the only option that does solve the issue, that we know that will solve the issue. You know, the only other option, I mean, again, just to throw all options out there, but whether they're feasible or not is another question, but is to rebuild the whole wall and the whole slope. But the feasibility of that doesn't make it an option, because that then means rebuilding utilities, asphalt, potentially getting into the building, footings and structures of the buildings, and kind of a bigger, you know, site impact and implications and what that has on the rest of the property.
Yeah, I mean, and just to echo, I mean, you know, we've been working with Becky for probably longer than Becky has enjoyed working with. I mean, I know this is such a priority for everybody, and we really do want to, you know, find a way to get this and make sure that there's no future sedimentation and erosion control issues. And man, I wish there was an easy button. I mean, all we can assure y'all of is, I mean, Mark has engaged Chimley Horn. Chimley Horn has said, hey, we can help you, but, you know, this is even a little bit out of our specialty. We got PSI, you know, geotechnical company. We've gotten, I think, one of the most, you know, experienced specialty contractors, GSI. We've had a lot of great minds looking into this, and there's no option 3 that we're not sharing. I mean, these are literally the only 2 options that all of us could possibly come up with, and we didn't really like option 2, which is why it wasn't included in the presentation 2 weeks ago. But in fairness, and because of the comments that were brought up, we thought only right to share the only other option that we have, which is these 2 options. I mean, to echo Mark, I mean, the third option of reconstructing the wall, it's not feasible. We don't think that we can actually physically design or build it without, you know, too much of an impact all the way back to the building.
Along that line, this is Ed. I've got a question. Now, you said that it's 2.5 to 1 slope, right? That you're going to fashion it for option 2?
That's right. That's exactly right.
So then, how far down are you going to go? Where is that going to start?
So the second wall is 46 feet back, but there is that shotcrete part, which is also angled and takes some. I don't know, have we gotten into the full design? Dave, that's probably maybe a best question for you. Do we know what we anticipate the height of the new walls to be, or have we not gotten that part?
Well, I want to, what's the starting point of the new wall? That's my question. If the height of the new wall is down 15 feet from the existing wall, then we're talking scaling back 2.5 feet times 15 feet or whatever. Give me a number there.
Yeah, so it would be it's 2.5 horizontal for 1 foot vertical. So if it's roughly, let's say 30 feet, 30 divided by 2.5. So, rough math, what is that? 12-ish, 13 feet of elevation difference.
So you're going to be excavating back, 35 feet, something like that?
Well, excavating back, when you say back, I mean, if we're talking about horizontal, we're literally going to be excavating. The new wall is going to sit very close to where the existing guardrail is. So we're going to have our parking, our curb, there's a guardrail. Within a couple feet of the existing guardrail is where that new wall would sit. So that new wall is going to be very, very close to the shopping center. And then we would go down all of the area in between, which we estimate to be about 45-ish feet, is going to be, what remains of that 45 feet will be sloped to that 2.5 to 1.
Right. And the length of that that you just said, how much distance is there?
A little of that goes into the design just because of the shotcrete portion. I don't know, Dave or Justin, do you have any gut kind of feel?
Yeah, so those pictures that we showed in the presentation that were right along the edge of a pavement would be a rough inclination of the upper wall. We would build that starting, 3 or 4 feet off the back of guardrail, something along those lines, extend on a half horizontal to 1 vertical slope, roughly, down on 15 slope feet, and then there'd be an inflection point, and then you would go about 46 feet horizontally, dropping on a 2.5 horizontal to 1 vertical, and ultimately you leave about 5 or 6 feet of the existing wall height in place. And then in regard to I think it was Eric's comment earlier on the stability, we often look at those segmental block walls in terms of internal and external stability. Internal would be kind of the block-on-block internal friction failure. And then that's a function of their dead weight friction coefficient and the earth pressures behind them. And the earth pressure is a function of the square of the wall height. So as the wall.
So what are you talking? You're talking three blocks or 2 blocks high,
roughly. Yeah.
And cutting it back from there.
Correct. So it will significantly reduce the fluid pressure of the earth load acting on the wall through the cut down of the wall height.
How do you align it back into the old wall with it straight up?
Well, I guess the old wall would stay in its current footprint, and we just start.
But I'm talking about when you're doing a repair. When the repair stops, there's the old wall again. No, yes, I'm trying to understand you.
Yeah.
So how do you slide that back? Because it's basically probably at least 30 feet back.
I have a sketch, Becky. Maybe you can let me make me a presenter, and I can share my screen. It's a sketch that wasn't included in the presentation. It might help. It might not, but it might help with this conversation.
Do you want to share your screen?
Am I taking this too far?
If I can, it says I need to be a presenter.
Yeah.
For Philip.
Ed, you're talking about option 1, right?
No, I'm talking about 2. I'm talking only about option 2.
Okay. So I'm going to see if this works here. Okay. So this is, and Dave, you can continue, but so this is the existing wall. We would cut down the existing wall, but where we cut down, the bottom portion of the wall would remain as is, right? Intact, existing. We would then slope at that 2.5 to 1. And then we would have the area where we are shotcreting, which would be, I think Dave said, what is it? It's like 0.5 or 1 to 1.3 or somewhere in that, right? And this is where the soil nail walls are going in. But our guardrail, right, is basically right here. Our building is somewhere over here. So these nails are going back, and it's impacting all of the area underneath of the pavement, which is where the utility. So that's one of our bigger concerns. And then the other bigger concern, as we've obviously discussed, is just the bottom portion of the wall. It's the same wall, which could lead to the same type of localized failures in today in the bottom portion of it.
But as was stated, by removing all of that material, you're drastically reducing the amount of pressure that's being exerted on that on the wall that you're leaving.
Absolutely. I mean, to be clear, I don't expect an issue in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. But again, to be clear, 15 years, 20 years. My point is, we not only cannot, but we actually would expect that over time, the continuous washing of those fines between them would likely lead to this. Now, what does that mean, right? Is it 2 years, or is it 20 years? Is it 50 years? The point being that it's not solving the root issue, right? It's not solving the root issue, which we believe option 1 is.
But are you
Can
going
you
to
find
be excavating?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ed. Could I ask a question?
No, I was
real
just
quick?
going to say. Yeah, go ahead. You go. You didn't. Yeah. You haven't.
Are you going to be excavating behind what's left of the existing wall and replacing some of that fill? Because I think really the heart of the problem is the fill that was used behind the existing wall. Like you said, it's boulders, so it's material that's moving around, and that's really what's pushing those blocks off. The blocks aren't just sliding off on their own; they're getting pushed by the heaving of the soil and the material behind the wall.
Yeah, right. So again, from the new elevation down, no, I mean, we're not excavating, and that's the reason why this works, right? As we learned from our PSI report, there's really no feasible way that we can find to remove all the way down to the bottom of the wall. So everything from the new top of elevation down will remain. However, we're not going to be replacing any of that stuff. All of this will be regraded, and the intent is to seed, put in some plantings. We want to limit any major trees all the way up against either of the walls, the new one or the old one, just roots don't damage. But we can work with the city to see what that looks like, and this would essentially again be some restoration related landscaping work in between.
I need to correct you guys on the terminology. We're not a city.
Thank you, Ed.
That's right.
I let it go 3 or 4 times, but you have to be 100,000. You got to have 100,000 population in Massachusetts to be considered a city.
Gotcha.
No, just kidding. I'm just,
No,
the plantings that you put in there are going to help stabilize that slope. That's the idea.
Correct.
David,
We would want a vegetative final stabilization in here, either grass or some sort of plantings. That's right.
Okay.
Ed,
is there any chance? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt your question. Go ahead.
My question is there any chance that there's logic to say that you could come up with a plan which walked between these two plans? Some of the points about getting behind the wall and seeing what you have and what's pushing out may make sense. And I know this committee doesn't want to see you guys driving, your whatever's 3 feet from the wetland. So it would seem that if you just but what you're talking about doesn't seem number 2 doesn't seem logical to me either. If you're going to be going way the hell back, excuse my language.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I started it, Ed.
Okay, I've got another question to ponder, if I may. How many stones, blocks, whatever we call those things, are you going to, on option 2, how many rows or whatever would you remove to shorten that wall? I think Ed asked this question, and I don't think it was answered.
Yeah, you know, it is a good question. Honestly, I don't know that we have that answer right now. I mean, we haven't jumped to any sort of like real heavy design, right? Part of our objective was to gauge which option. We can look into that, and I would be happy to send that information to Becky. But I don't want to give you any wrong information right now.
Okay, the reason I ask, okay, so let's just say you remove a couple of rows. I mean, you're significantly going to lower that thing. What are you going to do with those stones? How are you going to get them out of there?
So that would be, I mean, the area in between the two walls. So we would basically, as opposed to creating that path from the gravel road down to the bottom of the face of the wall, we would basically start at the top by the center of Hobbsbrook in kind of the drive lane, and we would cut a piece of the guardrail, and we would essentially start creating a path as we start excavating, and we would remove and take out, drive up the top, and basically take them and drive them away.
Would it be possible to sort of make a double wall where you take the stone off the top and you set it down on the wetland side of the existing wall, and now you've made it twice as hard to dislodge any of those stones? Because I'm assuming that you're going to significantly lower the height of that existing wall. Just throwing that idea out. I don't know how hard that would be to do that, but that would solve a huge issue.
You have to be careful here that we're not getting into engineering the project for.
Yeah. I think this is a point where we've tried to give you guys some input, and you've given us some good analysis of what we need. I think we've given you some feedback too.
Not yet, Mr. Goodwin.
What? Not yet what?
We haven't given them all the input that they require.
What do you have to say then?
I'd like to go back to wetland issues for a minute. One of the things that was sent to us, or that Becky was able to provide for us, was the geotech report. And strangely enough, the geotech report indicated that they discovered groundwater at 2 feet. Now think about that. They discovered groundwater at 2 feet, and we don't know when the test was taken. So it could have been early spring when it might have been a little bit higher, or much later in the year when it could have been significantly lower, but it's still at 2 feet. That's not far from an area which scares the bejesus out of me, because we're talking about 3 feet from the wetland where they're going to be working, and only 2 feet for the water table. I think we have to pay attention to that. It is entirely possible, because further on in the geotech report, it indicates that at the 15 to 20 foot depth level, there's a 9 to 10% saturation of water in those soils. If you go even further, it bumps up to between 29 and 35%. The lines indicate 25 to 35%. That is wetland. And we're talking about probably wetland going underneath that very tiny roadway. That may very well be one of the reasons why rocks have been collapsing. So in addition to the other questions, we have to ask, why do you need to have 10 feet between the two walls? Is there something sacred about that 10-foot measure? Because if we could move the new wall, whichever one it is, closer to the old wall, that gives us more distance away from the wetland. We are trying to protect that wetland.
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, and we can take that back to the chalkboard. I mean, I don't want to give any incorrect information. I mean, Justin or Dave, if you want to chime in. I mean, we did look at that 10-foot distance, and 10 foot is kind of where we landed. And again, we can go back and look at that, but I know that that was one of the things we discussed in our several internal team meetings.
Yeah, this is David GSI. Sorry, I was having troubles with my microphone earlier. But yeah, that 10-foot distance, our engineers have looked at that, and that's our conceptual design. I mean, we're looking to stabilize the existing wall, which is up to 20 feet tall. And in order to do that, we need enough reinforcing in our wall and enough material to resist those lateral loads. So that 10 feet is necessary. If we get to final design and we can reduce it by a couple of feet, that would be great.
You're talking about design number 1.
That's correct.
You don't need the 10 feet in design number 2.
That's correct. Yeah, and I want to add, part of the reason, in my opinion, why those boulders are moving is because the existing slope is too steep, right? So both of these options help with that. So that the option 1, that GCS wall, that will act as a buttress, not only to the existing wall to prevent any future movement of those blocks, it will also buttress the slope behind it. And in the same regard, in option 2, we're significantly flattening that slope to a relatively, what's considered a pretty stable slope angle of 2.5 to 1. So, I just wanted to point that out while we were talking about it.
Yep. I think this is a point I'd like to cut it off. Yep. Not for, unless somebody has another area that we want to go into about this. I think we've given you guys some guidance and some stuff to think about.
I have a quick question, Ed.
Yeah.
Surely, you know how high that option 2 wall is going to be. Somebody knows that, and I mean that to me is a critical piece of information. And I mean, you've got your 2.5 to 1. You've got everything figured out, the slope and everything. You got to know how high you are going to have that wall once you reduce the height of it. So
definitely, we've already gotten topographic survey. We've already gotten surveying. You're absolutely right. I feel like I'm on Shark Tank and I don't have my numbers with a chastise. I should have had that. I'm not prepared to answer that question. We can circle up and get you that information. You're right. It's simple math. We already have the topo. We know all of the elevations. I just don't want to tell you anything wrong on this call. So we'll circle up and get Becky that information.
Yeah, when you get back to the office, or give Becky a call and say how high the option 2 wall is going to end up. I'm not an engineer, but I'm a logical person. And anyway, that's all. That's my only comment, Ed.
The customer like a continuation, Ed.
Well, this is just an informal discussion. You don't need a continuation.
Thank you, Becky.
No problem.
Well, thank you guys, everybody and gals. Thank you all for the time again tonight, diving a little bit deeper into this. We will definitely take all of this input. We'll go back to the chalkboard once more. Certainly can't guarantee any changes of results, but we'll circle back up as an internal team as we discuss moving forward. And then Steve, we'll get with Becky to try to get more of the elevation information to you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We really appreciate you coming to the meeting. Justin, take care of that kid, will you?
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Becky?
All right, moving along. So we have the bylaw codification project. This is a project that the town is working on. Jean Boubon is heading this. What's happened is the town has hired general code publishers to recodify all of the bylaws and the associated regulations. So there'll be one document where everything could be found, everything will be structured the same way. So as part of that, they've kind of gone through and reviewed everything. And there's a couple things that I provided to you that have come up with, they have some recommendations. I know you looked at this in advance with my recommendations. Do you want me to go one by one through these? How do you want to proceed? Is there any questions on particular ones? I think some of them are pretty
That's the one about removing mining from the regulations.
Well,
say again, David.
I missed what you said, Dave.
Yeah. Well, why don't I just start quickly with the first one and we'll just go through them? That might be the most efficient way so we just don't miss anything. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. All right, so the first question, which was shown on here, is question 286-001. This was just a question where it's referenced, it says Wetlands Protect Act. It should say Wetlands Protection Act. I mean, I agree with that. I think it was just a misprint at the time. I recommend that we have them revise that to say protection.
I think protect is more of an action word, don't you?
Well, you gotta call your state representatives and talk about that, but, all right. So next is question 286-002. This is just, so this is within the regulations. Oh, wait, no, this is a bylaw change, sorry. Yeah, it's a bylaw change. So what they've noted is that there's these two sections that just refer to, it refers to wetland values. So they noted these two sections, and within the rest of the bylaw and in the beginning of the bylaw, it says resource area values. So I agree that it needs to be changed. They noted number 2 to change that. I think it needs to be number 1, resource area values protected by this bylaw, and that's what's defined in the actual bylaw purpose. So that would be my suggestion.
Totally agree.
All right.
Okay.
That was a good suggestion. I agree with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so question 286-3, this one, they noted, this is in the bylaw as well, that it says other municipal or state board. It should say other municipal or state board, and then it says agency or official. So I think that was just a misprint that never got caught. I recommend that it's changed. Okay?
Yep.
Next, 286-4, this is a reg change. Let me just read it so I remember what I'm looking at. Okay, so they're recommending that, so this is where it talks about in the alternate to criminal prosecution, the Conservation Commission may elect to utilize the non-criminal disposition procedure set forth in MGL Chapter 40, 21D. They're also saying, and as set forth in Chapter 1, Article 1 of the Town Code. So I did include that for you, and that is where the town has it structured for the fees. This is where it's specifically set for what the penalties will be. So I agree that they should reference this chart. And my one comment to you for consideration is that when we worked to change the bylaw regulations a few years back, one of the things we changed was we changed it so it was consistent with the bylaw, which said that, I mean, I put the whole language in there for you, but just, you know, any person who violates the provisions of the Sturbridge Wetland Bylaw, rules and regulations thereunder, or permits issued thereunder shall be punished by a fine not more than $300. Each day or portion thereof during which a violation shall constitute a separate offense. In each provision of the bylaw, rules and regulations and permit violated shall constitute a separate offense. So we changed it so it was consistent, because some of what your concerns were at the time was that there was this structure of a written warning first penalty of $25, then 50.
Okay.
You brought that up, so I was just noting that you have brought up your concerns with how that's set up, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. Didn't know if that's something you wanted to think about while they're doing this. I think that there's obviously some other steps and approvals with Board of Selectmen if you ever wanted to request some type of change. So I think that there's a few other things that would need to be done for that. Not saying it's something you have to do at this time. I'm just bringing that to your attention.
How's that different than now?
Say that again?
How is that different from now? How are you saying that if we wanted to change the amount of money, we'd have to go to the Board of Selectmen?
Well, I'm just saying, I think it's not just you that can approve that. I'm just saying if the board wanted to ask for that to be changed, I think there's another step where the Board of Selectmen would have to approve that as well. And I mean, I can look into that for you. I don't know the correct process on this.
On what?
The structuring of the non-criminal fees.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is.
Why do we?
Is not put the amount of the fees in the bylaw.
No, this is different. This is fines. This is fines. Yeah, when people are issued fines.
Yeah, I think the code publishers is recommending maximum fines per the statute for each one through the document.
So changing this first, second, and, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's all right. I know you don't. So right now, we have, and other people have, first, second, and subsequent offenses, written warning, first, 25, 50, 100. So that's the way it's set up. That's come up for them as a concern before.
What's the code publishers, are they making a recommendation on that?
I don't know. I don't know that they're making a recommendation on this. Their recommendation was that we reference this chart.
Oh.
That was their only
So,
recommendation.
Yeah, so we're not doing overhauls with this, more of a cleanup and codification, but if you do want to make that change, I would suggest you have Becky, write it up and submit it to the Board of Selectmen.
Gentlemen, I'm kind of confused. I'd like to just take a look at it. You gave it to, we just got it, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to go take a look at it, but.
That's fine. I mean, that's something separate. There is time to evaluate that, so I can do some more research for you. But I think for the time being, I think their suggestion to add that reference to the chart is a good idea. I think
it's not a problem.
Concur with that. So, all right. So that's something that, you can look at it a little bit more and discuss. The next one is question 365-01. This is a regulation change. They use the acronym for the mean annual high water line without referencing it before in the regulation. So we just need to say the full name there and then have the abbreviation there, I guess. So I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
That's good.
Not a problem.
All right. 365-02, this is the question about fees. And this is where they're recommending that all of the fee amounts come out of our regulations. And that should be on a separate document, so that way you don't have to go through an amendment to your regulations in order to change fees for the fee structure. So I agree with that. And then did I add a clause in here? Yeah, the language which they recommended would just say, fees are set from time to time by the Conservation Commission, who is empowered to issue a license, permit, certificate, or to render a service to perform work for a person or class of persons. So, and one other thing is that, I recommend their language, and I think too, there's some specific things that we include that have fees. I'd like to have a discussion, and I've brought this up before, about our fee structure and what we charge fees for and don't charge fees for. So I think that I would recommend that we include their sentence and then leave out the specific things in there that require fees so that we can evaluate. I can bring that to you and evaluate that as well as in moving forward.
Yeah. All right, I don't have a problem with that. David?
I agree.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree.
Eric? Yeah.
Makes sense.
Go ahead, Becky. Stephen, you all right with that?
Yep, I agree.
All right, question 365-03, 2022-03. This is just a reference to the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, talking about intermittent streams. This would be this is in our regulations, so it'd be a regulation change. They are correct. The number 1 is missing in there. So I do recommend that we add that number 1, so it brings the person to the specific portion of that, that regulation there.
What is number 1?
So it's 310, I don't have the wetland regs out right now. It's 310 CMR 10.58 2A1D. The 1 was missing, and that's important.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's just an indicator.
Yeah, it brings you to the
Okay.
specific section of the regulation, as if it's hard enough not to follow anyways,
Okay.
but, okay? Question
All right.
365-04. This is kind of a minor thing. They actually had the section of our regulation just said, lockbox, where people have to send their fees. So they just suggested that we change that to provide some clarity and have like a lead into that saying the following shall be filed with DEP lockbox address instead of just saying DEP lockbox. So it's a very minor thing, but I think it does provide some clarity for people. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and that's the last of those, so. So with that said, and I think I put that in my notes for you, that, you're not, you will have to officially vote on the final draft when it comes back. So you'll have a chance to review everything in its final form too, before that moves forward. So this is just, approving these recommended changes, and you will have that final draft come back. This whole document will have to go to town meeting, which it's my understanding that it would be like the annual town meeting next year. Yeah, next year's annual town meeting. Okay?
Okay.
So you'll see it again.
All right.
All right, and just before we do that, we'll go through and do the fee structure and recommendations for fee modifications, et cetera, too. All right, moving along. So, quick items here. One thing, received a request from a member of the Trails Committee. They were having some discussion. There's lots of discussion about electric bikes on conservation lands. All sorts of different e-bikes that are out there. I sent you both emails that I got to take a look at with some images. And then I did reach out to our conservation partners. So pretty much all of our conservation properties, our big ones, have conservation restrictions. So they have legally bound documents that, outline, I added one of them in there for you to look at, that they outline the purposes of the property, why it's being permanently protected, and then outlines, allowable activities and unpermitted activities. So for all of the properties that have conservation restrictions, I think it's kind of clear from the language that, it says the use, parking, or storage of motorized vehicles, including motorcycles, mopeds, all-terrain vehicles, motorized trail bikes, snowmobiles, and any other motorized vehicles on the premises, is not permitted except for maintenance and management and things like that. So I reached out to both Opakam Land Trust and Fish and Wildlife, because they both hold CRs on our properties, and their interpretation of that was that, correct, those bikes are not permitted on those, there's his cat, on those properties. So, that's the information that I found to put forward to you. I think that for properties that don't have conservation restrictions, I think you could develop a policy. It sounds like, there's some discussions about certain e-bikes that are different than others. You could work to develop one for those. But for the ones with, like I said, with the big conservation restrictions, I think that because they have that language, I think it clearly outlines that it's not an allowable use. So I don't know, I just wanted to share that with you. Huh?
I'd like to suggest that for the non-CR properties, we indicate clearly that motorized vehicles are not permitted. That takes care of the problem. Because even
Except that's not we don't have that authority.
I beg your pardon? We most certainly do. We have care, custody, and control.
If we have care, custody, and control, but there are non-CR properties that we do not have care, custody, and control on.
Oh, yeah, this would just be ones that are in your care and custody.
Right.
I mean, I think
yeah,
that the
and I agree
town,
with you on that, Dave.
the Board of Selectmen have control over riverlands. I mean, that's protected by a CR. I don't know what other conservation lands. This is more of a conservation land discussion, I guess.
Okay.
To take Dave's, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to take Dave's suggestion, which I agree, everything should be the same, and I think that the CR type properties make a good precedent, and we agree with those, and I think that we should make a proposal to the Board of Selectmen to say, you're in charge of these. The ones we're in charge of, we're not allowing motorized vehicles.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. Yeah.
Okay, good.
We don't have to reach out
to make that decision. Yeah.
We do not have to reach out to the Board of Selectmen because the Board of Selectmen only has care, custody, and control of the Riverlands, and the Riverlands is under a CR, which goes under what Becky was talking about earlier.
Which ones don't have a CR? Which ones do we need to?
Well, so I think
to have who does have care?
So I think I think that all of the properties that have been deeded for conservation have gone to the care and custody of you. So all of those conservation properties that don't have CRs would be in your care and custody. I mean, there's properties that the town has that's, not conservation land. If it was, it would be in your care and custody. Yep. And I don't think we have, control. Yeah. They can develop those. They can use them for other purposes. I mean, they could, if they had large properties that they were concerned about, I guess they could develop their own policy, but.
I think there needs to be a general.
For all practical purposes.
I just think there needs to be a general policy that covers all open space.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you, and I also feel that electronic should be treated the same as motor as gas or diesel.
It's motor.
Yeah, it's a motor. Yeah.
So no motorized vehicle.
No disagreement here.
Isn't it an issue of speed? I mean, obviously we're not going to be spilling. What's the issue with the e-bikes and motorized is it must be an issue of how fast you can go on a trail.
Right.
With a motor, you're gonna.
Right. It's creating ruts that are going to cause erosion.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
More
okay.
aggressively.
I mean,
and there's plenty. I'd like to take you for a ride, and one of my children has an electric car. I'd like to take you for a ride, and I'd snap your neck with it. It's so fast.
Yeah.
So you can do the same thing with a motorized. Yeah.
I'm just saying, you need a rebuttal. You say, we're not allowing, and they're going to say, well, that was written because of spilling fuel, and we need to say, no, it's not just spilling of fuel. It's what you just said, Ed, and what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. But I really feel that we should involve the selectmen, and it should be there. We, get them involved, and they agree to it, then great. And I think it should be town-wide. Don't give me that look, Barnacle. I know it.
I see it on television.
All right, so I can put together
Go ahead, Beck.
I can put together a memo for you to the Board of Selectmen, which I can share with you before I send over on that, okay? All right. Moving forward, two small things. It's just correspondence. I don't really see the need for a big discussion on either one of these. One is just a notification of vegetation maintenance activities for the Tennessee gas pipeline. This is, it's vegetation management along the right-of-way. These activities are exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. They do send us notification prior to them moving forward. I think they're required to by law and under our bylaw. I don't have any concerns with this. It's not a regulated activity, but I did want to share it with you because it's probably it's about 13 and a half miles through, from Hamden to Worcester County, so I'm not sure exactly how much in Sturbridge. It doesn't say on here, but, in case you do see it, just be aware of it. Okay?
Right.
All right.
Courtesy thing.
Yeah. Yep, and the other one is a petition that we were copied on. Ed mentioned this at the last meeting, so I did want to share it with you. It was to the Board of Selectmen, or to Town Administrator, actually. A petition from different residents that they would like the town to consider purchasing 66 Westwood Drive, which is currently listed for sale. It's like 11 and a half acres with over 1,600 feet of frontage on Cedar Lake. It's that one big stretch that's left on Cedar Lake untouched. This is in the Chapter 61B program for recreation. They do have it listed for sale. So if they do get a buyer, they do need to come to the town for the right of first refusal.
Only if the buyer wants to change the use.
Only if the buyer wants to change the use, correct. Thank you, Jeff. So I think the residents in that area just wanted to make the town aware of that and let them know that they were interested that it should be conservation property. Okay? There's no action at this time because there's no purchase and sale or change of use or anything like that, so.
The board decided to wait to see if there was going to be a change of use, or they did get a notice of first, or right of first refusal. So, that's where they are.
What do we have, 30 days after the right of first refusal has been indicated?
I think it's 90.
It's longer than 30.
Yeah, it's longer than 30.
Yeah. The exact number of days.
Yeah, it's longer than 30. And that's something, when those come through, I bring those to you as well. Just a couple quick little things, just to remind you. Our next meeting isn't until October 6th, which is 3 weeks. So we do not have site visits scheduled for next week. Next site visit schedule will be September 29th. As of right now, we do have on the agenda, we have 3 new projects for a site visit. We have, I believe, 4 now continuations. So we will have in one of them, I think will be to 9 Holland Road potentially. So we do have about 5 or so site visits to perform, and a lot of them are new, like there's a couple of new single family houses. So they take a little bit longer, just so you're aware. So that site visit day will be September 29th. Okay?
For those of you that went on the last site visits, I have a new car, so I'll be able to go.
Congratulations.
So, and just real quick, I just wanted to
the
point.
old one to the tow truck driver.
I just wanted to point out, Holly and I have been working on doing my department head report, and she put a lot of numbers together looking at permits and applications that we've received. So since the beginning of the fiscal year in July of 2019, we have received 173 applications for permits. So that's, NOIs, determinations, everything. And separately, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I think we had over 30 requests for certificate of compliance as well. So I'll share that with you. I just submitted that today, but it's a pretty substantial amount of applications that we've received. And since January 1st of this year, we received 108 applications. So that's all during COVID too. So just gives you an idea of how many projects have come through. So, all right, I'll share that report with you though.
Interesting. We know you've been working hard, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Before we move on, for our agenda, could we re-add the enforcement order to the list, please? It has been dropped off. We talked about it once, about 2 months ago, but we haven't talked about it since. and we have a lot of enforcement orders that we really should get off the list, and others that we should be taking some action on.
Okay, so I'll bring back that enforcement order list from, I'll bring back the ones that are active, that haven't been resolved yet, for an update and discussion.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Anything else, Becky?
No, that's it.
Richard Esther.
Oh, I'm on mute. Mr. Chair, I make that motion.
I know you said.
Just use sign language. Go like this. We're
Yeah.
out of here. We'll understand. Does this bring your cat to work today? I noticed that two of our members have a cat with them.
Do you need one? I know someone who needs to get rid of a cat. I'm just kidding.
My cat just looked at the phone when you.
Do I have a second to Steve's? No?
Please.
No second?
I'll second it. Yeah, sure. Eric Gaspard, second.
All in favor?
Adios.
It's unanimous.
In a couple of weeks, Ed.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Becky.
Thank you,
Good
Becky.
night, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.